Today we're talking about Jesus on Sabbath.
Jesus on Sabbath.
Zach, why don't you start us off on that?
I love the passage in Colossians that talks about how Jesus was there in creation. All things were created by Jesus, for Jesus. And so we are introduced to the Sabbath on page 2 of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. And there's so much here to glean. I'll just kind of name a few things. One, when Jesus is creating, the Sabbath is a 24-hour day. It is an actual day. The Sabbath is built into the fabric of creation. It's as if we are created to rest, which I think we get, right? Like you can pull an all-nighter 1 or 2, maybe 3 nights in a row, but at some point, your body just is going to shut down. God created us where we need rest. We were created to take a day and rest. Here's one of the things that I think is so beautiful is in creation, God creates all of the animal kingdom, and then he has this like command and almost this blessing where he says, be fruitful and multiply. It's kind of a benediction of go and be fruitful, create life. And then Jesus does the same thing. He says after he creates humanity, it says he blessed them. He gave them this benediction. And what is the blessing? It is be fruitful and multiply. That is, go and give life. And then when it says this in Genesis 2:1, it says, thus the heaven and earth were finished and all of the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day. So God is resting from all his work that he had done. In verse 3, it says, so God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. And this idea that God blesses the animal kingdom, God blesses humanity and says, be fruitful, multiply, go and bring forth life. And God even blesses the Sabbath. He blesses a day, as if to say, this day will give you life. And so I think one of the things that we can learn about the Sabbath that Jesus wants us to know, we need it. It's built into the fabric of creation. And that when we practice it, it will give us life. Talk to me from your perspective. What do you see Jesus saying, doing, living out the Sabbath?
Well, I think Jesus, everything that you just said about Genesis, I think is reflected when Jesus said that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And we always want to kind of think about how we can use things and not think about how God engineered us and the things that we need. And thankfully, God is thinking about our well-being, and he cares about us, right? And even more than just having that day, and people kind of use the Sabbath for different things. For some people, it becomes just a time of tiring recreation, more so than real rest. But Jesus said he was Lord of the Sabbath. And in fact, the New Testament talks about Jesus being our Sabbath rest. And he said to people, he said, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I think there are a lot of people today who are not just overworked, but they are in distress in their soul. They are weary in their soul. They're troubled in their soul. And what they need is the kind of rest that comes from Jesus. And so when we come to Jesus and when we trust him and we honor the way that God created us, this rhythm of having this day of rest, which is more than just a day of not working, it's a day of focusing on God, I think, a day of renewal, of allowing him to be in our heart, that all that He created us for Him to be in our hearts,
Mm-hmm.
to be our rest, that we experience something that is indeed life-giving.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about some aspects of that. I can't remember exactly how you said it a minute ago when we were just kicking things around. But
Yeah. Well, a question that people might have is, how do I take a Sabbath, right? Like, what is involved? And I think when you look at Scripture, and there's actually been quite a bit written about this and talked about this, there's really 4 elements that I think we can look to in Scripture that are essential to Sabbath. Stop working, rest, just rest, delight, and worship. Stop, rest, delight, worship. You take out any one of these components, and I think you are missing out on the fullness of what Sabbath is meant to be. It's not just a day off.
now, what do you mean by delight? I can track with the other 3 pretty intuitively, but when you say delight, what specifically is that talking about?
Well, I think it goes back to God blessed the Sabbath. This is a day that's meant to give you life. So I think delight, I think celebrate. I think here's what it looks like for me. I try to eat a really good meal. Our dinner on our Sabbath, we try and eat a really good meal. I like good food, or a dessert. So that's, or the other thing is do something fun, do something you enjoy. And so I really enjoy activities. So I enjoyed running, I enjoy biking. And so if I'm able to, I'll go for a run, mostly on my treadmill, or something along those lines. So that's what I mean by delight.
Okay, that's good. So it's not something that's burdensome, but it's a kind of recreation. It's a kind of activity that is delightful in a sense that it kind of feeds your
Gives you
soul.
life.
Yeah.
It gives you. Well, I think it's helpful because man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man. It's supposed to be this gift, and so maybe what Sabbath is for you is going to look a little bit different. Now, I think there's going to be some similarities, like, hey, this should be a day of where worship is involved in it. But I think, you might say yours has to do with gardening. Maybe not. Maybe that is not delightful. But some people would say gardening. I'm like, that's not very delightful for me. So let me ask you this. What does a Sabbath day look like for you?
Well, I think one aspect of Sabbath is trusting God, because to take a day, whether it's from your vocational work that you're doing, to earn a living, or maybe sometimes just laying down the burden of just personal responsibilities, to say, I'm going to trust God. I think about those few businesses that don't open on, let's say, a Sunday, that they choose to say, we're going to give our employees 1 day a week off. And I'm sure that's at some sacrifice for what they could make in regarding the profit of their business. But to say at some point, I'm going to trust God, and I'm going to enjoy a day of rest, and I'm not going to worry about what I'm giving up to do this. I'm going to trust God to provide for me. And so one facet of a Sabbath for me is it's an opportunity just to express, God, you are God. You're in control of things. I can trust you, and I'm going to take my hand off the wheel and just enjoy today, not carrying the burden of feeling responsible for everything in the world, and let you be God. And it kind of recenters us and reminds us that there really is a God who is present and at work in our world and in our lives, and we can trust Him.
Yeah.
And so one aspect for me is just a day to realize, God's got this, and I can relax today and trust Him and just rest. So that's more of a attitude than maybe an action for enjoying the Sabbath.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think in a way it's got to start with attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have the right attitude, I mean, wasn't that the problem of the religious leaders of that day? Their attitude towards the Sabbath completely missed the point, and
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is trying to get this across to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I for a word of application, I wonder how many of you listening or watching, you have a day where you can rest. It can be a Sabbath where you stop and you rest and you delight and you worship, having that as a component. And go and do that. Walter Brueggemann, I remember coming across this. He says this: people who keep Sabbath live all 7 days differently. And I think that's so true, that when you can have a 24-hour day that is a Sabbath, it's amazing how much it blesses and reinvigorates and strengthens the other 6 days of the week. So I would just challenge and encourage you, all of you guys listening in, do you practice Sabbath? And what does that look like for you? Or maybe you're sitting there and go, I need to practice Sabbath. We invite you, find a day and stop, rest, delight, and worship, and see how God can use that day where you trust in Him, like Pastor John said, and see how it will give you a kind of rest that you need, not just physically, but for your soul as you rest in Jesus, and see how it affects the other 6 days of your week. Thanks for joining in, and we look forward to seeing and having you listen